Mr. Pond Boss, tell me what to do to make all my Lunker Lake dreams come true.
Hello everybody, Bob Lusk, the Pond Boss, coming at you live from LL, 3, Lusk Landing, 3 is what we call it nowadays. So, hey, you guys know what to do. Hashtag Pond Boss Magazine in the comment section. Click like. Share this little video to your timeline, and you're eligible for a drawing for a Pond Boss hat and whatever else Leanne says. And I've been telling you we're going to do a drawing. I'll get in touch with her tomorrow. We really need to do that. So welcome to this Wednesday. I'm feeling really good. Got my voice back. Haven't really felt bad, but just haven't had a voice. You know, this COVID thing, that thing's kind of goofy, but, you know. Anyway, hello, Jim Allen. Good to see you, buddy. Hope all is well there. Looks like Billy Bates is checking in from Maryland. Jim Allen is over there in Kentucky. You know, I thought tonight, there's Mike Cottrell here in Radio. Yeah, we got some little showers. I got spit on a while ago out here in Pecan Plantation. There was probably 6 inches between the drops, but they were coming out hitting my truck. Yep. So, Leah Groons from up there around Tulsa, Oklahoma, Beggs, Oklahoma. Jason Nipstad over there from North Cackalack. We got a pretty good group coming in. Michael Eric from Iowa. John Funk isn't going to make it tonight. He's got another commitment, but he did send me an email today. So we got, looks like 24 folks. Good to see you, Todd Austin. So I think tonight what I'm going to talk about, I thought about it for every bit of 15 minutes, and it made good sense to me. Hey, Tom Davis, good to see you, brother. Let's see. Ooh, James Allen, we have a red algae on the lake. It seems like each week we get a different color. Any comment? Yes, the hotter it gets, especially with static water that's standing still water really wants to become stable, but it can't because there's something fighting to gain advantage. It's kind of like Washington, D.C. They all suck, but they're fighting for posture and power and position. The same thing's going on with these algae right now. So you got this political party playing stupid games to try to take over your water. That's what they're trying to do. Hello, Dave Davidson, longtime friend from Hearst, America. All right, Tommy Welsh got his half-acre pond built. That's cool. So that algae is going to be volatile. It's going to ebb and flow based on the water temperature, water clarity, what's dissolved in the water in terms of minerals and metals and nutrients. And this time of year, the bad algae has an advantage because it can outcompete the good algae because of the heat. You know, and so this is the time of year we see harmful algal blooms more often than not. You know, so as long as it's coming and going, the main comment I'm going to give you is to check visibility. I think that's the backbone. I talked about that last week. You guys heard that because I think every one of you guys here watched it last week. But you want to check visibility and check temperature. That's the two things that when you're talking to a fisheries biologist or an algae expert, whoever you're talking to, that's going to be some of the things that give them a starting point as to what to think about it and then what to look for. So the purpose you're getting a different color each week is because they ebb and flow, they come and go, and they fight and compete. And as they're doing that, one will gain an upper hand and the other one's like a seesaw. It's a balancing act. You know, it's just like in the midterm elections, there's going to be a balancing act. You know, and so the algae is doing the same thing. When this one gains an advantage, something happens to it where it slits its own throat or does something stupid, runs out of food, its temperature window closes, it dies and sinks, then something else comes and takes its place. So as long as there's sunlight penetration, that's a reason we look at visibility. As long as the temperature's in the window that stuff's going to grow and it has something to eat, something's going to grow. Now, if the visibility here's the meat answer. If the visibility drops below about 12 inches this time of year, that lake can be in trouble. 18 inches this time of year, to me, is the magic number. You know, if there's no aeration, no way to exchange water, 18 inches is the magic number to be watching for. If it decreases significantly from 18 inches, call for help. Find somebody locally that knows what's going on with it. I've got one lone hair doing something to my face. You want to make me sneeze. So, anyway, hello, Mike Fornash. There's my answer to that. Tommy, question, should the pond hold water right off? Hello, Richard Williams, Justin Ludwig, James Allen, 500 centimeters. I can't think in centimeters. So you got to decipher that for me. Should it hold water right off? Yeah, it should. Hello, Danny Mac. Phone alarm at 6:24. Okay, so here's the answer on the Havoc Pond. Should it hold water right off? Yes, it should, if it was built right. Now, here's what happens, especially if you're building a pond during a drought. There's very little moisture in the soil, so as soon as that water hits it, it's going to wick. It's going to migrate. I did a little experiment this morning, turned the water on, the hose on, just a real slight amount, ran it through. We just built a gutter system underneath we got a swimming pool of all things now, and when the guys were building it, wanted water coming off the roof to go underneath through pipe. So I wanted to see how well that was working and how far water is going to migrate into the dirt. So I turned the water hose on and put it into one of the little drain pipes in the deck of the pool and went back and checked it 15 minutes later. That water was coming out that plastic pipe, but it wasn't going very far because this dry soil is soaking it up. Same thing's going to happen with your pond. Jacob West sent me a text a few minutes ago. They caught an otter. So that's part of the reason I chose this topic was because of that picture. So here's where I'm going to go with this topic. And Jacob, this fits right in with how you're thinking, what you guys are wanting to do. You know, I get, over the last 40 plus years, I have talked to hundreds and hundreds of people who say, one of my goals is to grow is the biggest fish I can grow. Well, that's a noble goal. It's just not easy to do. And I'm going to kind of take you through those steps. Now, I'm going to kind of focus this discussion on trophy fish. And these concepts apply pretty much to all species. Now, trophy is whatever is bigger than the biggest one you've ever caught. You know, and for some people that might be a 13-pound bass. Somebody else it might be a pound-and-a-half bluegill. You know, for somebody else it might be a 4-pound walleye. You know, so here's what I'm going to tell you. And I'll just use bass as an example of this because everybody knows about bass. So in order to grow a bass to be trophy size, largemouth bass, you really have two significant jobs with the bass. Now, of course, it all starts off with these principles. Starts off with happy water. Right now, water's stressed out because it's hot, or there's too much of it, or too little of it, or it's evaporating. You know, so if your water is happy, healthy, and it's got all the elements that what's living in it needs to not be stressed, you got happy water. The second thing is the right kind of habitat, not only for that species of fish, but for the different sizes of the different species of fish. So if you've got the right kind of habitat for little bitty bluegill and medium-sized bluegill, larger ones and trophy-sized ones, you're going to grow them. It's going to be a more likely to succeed. The third part of that puzzle is food chain. If a fish doesn't eat properly through all of its stages of life, it shows up at the end of its life by how big it gets. The fourth piece is the genetic strains. That's a big deal. You got to have the right genetics for your part of the planet, or you're not going to grow trophy fish. Then the final piece is the right harvest plan. Now here's where, in the little description I had the girls write down earlier, it's this. If you don't have all the links in this chain of events, then your chain is going to be weak, and it's not going to be able to pull the bulldozer out of the mud. You know, so you got to have all these links. I just named 5 of them. Let's talk about genetics as part of that puzzle. And I've talked about this before, but here's the highlights. Here's the Cliff's Notes. With the right genetics, there is no assurance, guarantee, promise, or significant chance that by itself is going to grow big fish. Think about it like this. Let's just go pick out any random middle school in America, and there's 200 eighth graders. Of those 200 eighth graders, how many of those really have the genetic propensity to be an NBA star, or be an NFL football player, or be a world-class ballet dancer, or someone in the best symphony in the world? How many of them have the genetic propensity? There's probably some that do. But then out of that batch that do, which is going to be a small percentage, comparatively speaking, let's say out of 200 kids, there's 20 that have the genetic propensity. Out of those 20, how many of them are going to have the desire and the work ethic and the parental guidance, and then the opportunity to be that which they're genetically predisposed? Not many. And out of that batch of 200, if one of them makes it to that level, that's about the same way it works with the fishery. So just because a fish has great genetics doesn't give it the right or the opportunity or the propensity or the nature in that environment to grow to huge sizes. So you can take genetics and kind of set it over here on its own. You got to have it, but that doesn't mean that's going to ensure that fish population is going to grow those fish to giant sizes. So it circles right back to the water. Okay, so let's just going back to largemouth bass, two things have to happen. First of all, you got to get those fish to 17 and a half inches as fast as possible. Now 17, and I figured this out by myself a long time ago by doing it. 17 and a half inches is a bass that's right at 3 pounds, whose mouth is big enough to eat the dominant size ranges of fish in the pond. So then they'll have food the whole time. So how do you get a bass from this big when you stock it to that big in the shortest period of time? You got to make sure it's got the right amount of food, that its competition is the least amount, that it is the best of that class, that fish is the very best one. So you do that by selective harvest. Girlfriend, I'm doing a show, honey. My little red-headed dog now telling me she needs to go outside. And I invited her to do that a while ago, but she said no. So we're going to have to wait. So as long as you start thinking about that, then another key piece to this puzzle is to be sure they have the right size food at the right time. My thought process over the years of trying to figure this stuff out has always been, if we do everything right in the spring and the summer, we got a good feed program, we maintain a healthy bloom, we're culling properly through the course of the year, that lake is going to produce the food chain that it needs. And then we're going to get to the fall, which is not far from us. I mean, we've had something like 68 days above 100 degrees. But tomorrow, the high's supposed to be 88. Well, when we start getting days like that, where the temperature starts to go down and gets into that perfect operating temperature for these game fish that you're trying to grow to huge sizes, they want to go on to a feeding spurt, a growth spree. They want to eat as much as they can, and part of their mission is to get their bodies in shape to go into winter. And the farther north you live, the more important that is for those fish. So my process plan for managing a fishery was to do everything that you can in the spring, early summer, fight through the late hot part of the summer. And then when you get to the fall, everything's set for those fish just to gorge themselves and eat. But if you miss one piece of that puzzle, if you didn't cull selectively the fish that aren't performing well, or the plankton bloom gave up in May instead of giving up in June, or your feeders were empty for 2 weeks because they got clogged and the lid blew off in a rainstorm or something. With all that stuff, if you don't have all these pieces of this chain, these links of this chain working together, by the time you get to fall, there could be a void. And I'm going to tell you, the majority of the ponds going into the fall are going to have a void. Now, Jacob, I'm not talking to you because your lake is young. Your fishery is in really good shape. But most people who have a mature fishery, that's an issue that they're going to fall into, and they just don't know it. So I'm a big proponent of coming in when the water temperature gets a little bit lower meaning in the mid 70s, when fish are coming shallow and feeding like crazy, to do a quick survey, whether you pay a professional to do it, or you go out and do some sampling yourself with nets and, trap nets, seines, fishing, and kind of study your food chain, make sure you've got everything you need. Because if you don't, I am now getting to be more of a proponent. When somebody says, hey, I really want to grow big fish, you're going to throw money at it. I was talking to a guy earlier today, not today, but a couple days ago, Monday, and he's thinking about, I'm going to run off on a tangent here. He says, I'm thinking about building a lake, but man, I'm getting bids for like $220,000 to $300,000 for a 4 to 6 acre lake. He said, I don't know that I want to spend that much. And I said, well, I think $300,000 is probably a little bit out of hand. He says, well, do you think $200,000? That seems like a lot of money. So I said, well, let's compare. How much is a tricked out brand new bass boat nowadays that you're going to finance at the bank? He said, man, I don't know, 60,000? No, it's 80. You're not going to pull it with that truck. You got to have another truck. So you flip the switch, you spend $130,000 on a truck and a boat that you financed at the bank, and the minute you drive it off the lot, it's going to depreciate. When you go spend $200,000 to build a lake, it's your lake, and you're not waiting in line to launch a boat to get on the lake and go find somebody fishing in your honey hole. You're going to have your own honey hole. So if you're going to do that, then you need to throw a few dollars at it if you truly want to grow some big fish, whether they be walleye or big bluegills or smallmouth bass or largemouth bass. You need to kind of get your finger on the pulse of that fishery and understand the status of it going into the fall, because that's when you're going to get some of your best growth rates, in the fall. That's when the food should be the most plentiful. If it isn't, supplement it. If it is, go with it. Be culling some of the weigh and measure bass. I beat that topic to death. So, job 2 is once you get a bass to 17.5 inches long, then you got to get it up to that 13, 14, 15 pounds. Big fish have big feeding habits. That's when we start talking about big pieces of meat for food like gizzard shad, and how you selectively cull your excess largemouth bass and how you preserve your bigger fish. And then we got to talk about predators. When you're pushing your pond to grow more fish than it would in nature, you're going to invite predators. You're going to invite avian predators, cormorants, pelicans, diving ducks, and hingas. You're going to invite those to come and feast on your meal. That circles back to the habitat. So when you designed your lake, do you have some escape cover for your best fish to be able to avoid these diving birds that have to have space? Because they want to herd the fish over and then eat them. Better yet, now like what happened with Jacob, he sent me a picture of the biggest otter I've seen in a long, long time. And so otters are just infamous for going and catching your best fish, chewing the guts out, laying it up on your dock after they play with it for a little while. And then we look at those animals and say, aren't they cute? They swim so cute. They swim on their backs, but they eat that bass at 6 pounds that's 4 years old that you busted your butt to get to, to get to grow that big. So there's my first spiel. So now then, let me go back up here to some of these questions and see what's going on here. Holy cow. Here I've been talking. I'm already back. I'm already behind. Okay, looky there. Woo. Okay, Wesley Ellis, check my water temperature at 2 feet. It was 85 degrees at 7 p.m. in Northwest Georgia. Should I check it at a different depth? I would do that. And I tell you what, 85 is right on the cusp of it being too hot. Actually, it is too hot, but it's not fatally hot. But if you can check it at 2 feet, 4 feet, 6 feet, 8 feet, and see if you've got a thermocline. And if you're aerating, then you're not likely to have a thermocline. If it's 85 degrees top to bottom, then we're going to talk about it. But if it drops down, hits the thermocline, it goes 80, start at 2 feet, 85, 4 feet, 83. You get to 6 feet, it's 72, and then you get to 8 feet, and it's 68. You're okay. Yes, you should check it. Scott Grafzoo from Missouri. Good to see you, buddy. Doug Cusick. Howdy. Ron Arduin. Ardwan, my good friend from Lake Charles, Louisiana. Justin Ludwig, thankfully the weather, yeah, it is cooling down. Doug Cusick, you got it. Hashtag Pond Boss Magazine. Click like, share this to your timeline. You're eligible for a drawing for a Pond Boss hat. Look at there, Mark Williams, Dr. Mark Williams from Mountain Home, Arkansas. He finally figured out how to do it. That's it. There you go. Good to see you, buddy. Dustin Crawley, howdy. Christopher Aguilar from South Louisiana, the Boudin Man. Look at there. Scott's talking to Kevin. Jeremy Day from Jeremy Day Todd, Mission, Texas. Jeremy Day, Mission, Texas. You're doing amazing. John, I know what you meant. Job. I see it. Thank you. Billy Bates from Maryland. We all know you can grow copper-nosed bluegill huge on high-quality pellets. Kingfisher Society, Bruce, Sarah, but who are growing some huge northern strain bluegill? Only about 5% of my bluegill are copper-nosed. The large majority are northern, so I'm just trying to see where mine are relative to others feeding. You know what? The farther north you go, you have bigger odds to overcome, and it's not the bluegills. Okay, listen to me here. It's not those fish. The northern strain bluegills you have in that part of the country. Matter of fact, I would avoid copper-nosed bluegill. The only reason that copper-nosed bluegill could work for you in Maryland is because you're right along the eastern seaboard and your client is influenced by the Atlantic Ocean. So you go another 200 miles west, copper-nosed are going to die. But they're really not going to thrive there like they would in Florida or Georgia or even Texas. But the fish you've got, the best of the best, have that propensity to get big. So the problem that you have in northern tier states is bluegill they don't even spawn until late June or early July. Then they got about 60 or 70 days to grow. So you, in Maryland, get one spawn, maybe two spawns. So when that happens, those fish grow so fast that they outgrow the predators that eat them and they get overcrowded. So overcrowding is the biggest issue there in northern tier states. So one of the things you got to do is you got to have enough big predators. In your case, maybe tiger muskies, or it could be even walleyes and some largemouth bass if you can get them up over 16 inches long that can help cull those overproductive bluegills. Now, ironically, here's where the irony comes in. In northern tier states where bluegill don't spawn until late June or even in early July, that first spawn is going to grow like crazy. Then they're going to grow fast. And then the mature adults are going to try to get eggs again and do it one more time, maybe in September. By that time, the window's closing rapidly on temperature for them to grow as fast as they can. Where here in Texas, for example, bluegills may spawn 5 times. 4 times, Oklahoma 3 times, Kansas 2 to 3 times, Iowa 2 to 3 times. So what goes on there is when you've got those tiers of size classes, that can support the predators that can grow big enough to harvest them and keep their numbers culled some. So when you add a feeding program, make sure you have enough predators to eat enough of those bluegills, then your odds are going to go up that you can grow some bigger bluegills. But it's going to take a little bit more work in northern tier states because you have a shorter growing season, and your survival rates of baby bluegill are usually really, really high because they grow so fast, and there's not enough of the right size predators to keep their numbers under control. But you do have to feed them to make them grow very big. And the 3 main lakes, and I see Bruce is in Nebraska. He's got bluegills over 2 pounds. And if he can do it there, then you can do it in Maryland. And it is about genetics, but it's also about genetic plasticity. Ooh. So I've talked about this before, but here's the nuts and bolts on that. Let's say we take 100 bluegill and we put them into a stream. There's going to be a percentage of those fish that adjust and adapt to that environment. But we take that same 100 and we put them into a 100-acre lake. The same percentage is going to thrive in that lake, but it's going to be different fish in that batch. But wait, we take that same 100 and put them in your pond. A percentage is going to have everything it takes to thrive in your pond. And that's plasticity. Okay, so there's going to be a segment or a percentage of those fish they all have enough genetics, good kind of bluegill genetics, that they can get to be a pound, pound and a quarter, and be 10 inches long and lay over a dinner plate. So at that point, it's providing the right kind of food, culling some, and you got to figure out how to do that. You can do that with traps. You can do that with seines. It's hard to do it angling, but you can do that. Michael, air rig, new 3-acre Iowa pond this spring had 1,200 gills, 300 red ear, 5 gallons of fathead minnows. 5 gallons of fathead minnows is about 40 pounds. Now the bluegills and red ear are growing great, and tons of little fatheads. Can stocking smallmouth bass and walleye control the bluegills in the future? Or should some wipers be added as well? We're trying to stay away from largemouth bass. I would make the wiper call later. Excuse me, I would not do that right now. I would give those smallmouth bass and those walleye the chance to get in there and thrive. And then monitor. If your fathead numbers begin to plummet, your bluegill numbers look like they're getting crowded, that's when you need to start talking about wipers. Look at wipers as a lawnmower. You're not going to mow unless the grass is tall. If the grass is tall, get a mower. Let's see, there's Dick Tabbert. Michael Gray. I know, Michael, the sun's it's starting to get a little dark here, but it's sun must be going down over there. Either that or he's watching his phone while he's driving a traco hammering through some rocks somewhere near Nashville, Tennessee. Robert Mondavi Cab. Nice way to wrap up a day. Hanging out with you guys, a little wine, and a one-sided conversation. Hey, David Austin. Jeremy Day's got it. Danny Mack's got it. Billy Bates still got snakeheads. Yep. And those are going to affect your bluegill population. I hate snakeheads. They're against the law. They're exotics, and they need to die. They might help keep your bluegill numbers down. Tim Dill's got that. Hey, Christy Berg, got your magazine. Great. Speaking of that, let's take a minute. Look at there. Palm Moss Magazine. This is the latest issue. There's Drew Hayes Pond right there on the cover. I shot that picture in Pennsylvania back in June. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful pond. $35 a year. Cheaper than a Friday night date, and it lasts a year. Holy cow, $35 a year? If you go to dinner and have a drink, that's $50. Lots of nuggets in here, I promise you. Lots of nuggets. That steak you eat at dinner might be great, but this is going to carry you to the next level. Okay. Let's see. Scott says, my favorite subject, big bass. You know any good places in Missouri to get your water tested for cheap? I tell you what, no, I don't know anywhere in Missouri to get your water tested for cheap. I send mine to the Soil Sciences Lab at Texas A&M. If you'll go to Texas A&M's website, it's the Soil Sciences Lab. There's several menu items. One of them is water testing. And if you can't find it, email me. Just info@palmboss.com. Ask for a water analysis form. I'll email you one. And it's $40. And when they send you the analysis, have them send it to me. Let me look at it with you so we can talk about it. Look at that. Scott knows somebody. Look at here. Mark Williams, just a suggestion to help cull is invite the staff from local, county, and state police, fire department's Office of Emergency Management, and have a small competition. Set the cull size limit for bass. They can also take out the bigger, less desirable channel cast. They have fun, feel appreciated, and an option other than electroshocking. Ask Mark how he knows that. He's doing it. Harrison Davis, good to see you, buddy. Sometimes, I feel like a bluegill with this show, waiting to receive his Purina Aquamax MVP nuggets from the Texas Hunter Feeders. Perfect timing. Perfect timing, Harrison. That's a good segue. I'm glad you did that. One of my favorite things about Texas Hunter are the people. It's Dale Baden who runs the show, Chris Blood, Cody. They've got a really good team down there, and not only are their products good, they're great, but their customer service is impeccable. That's kind of a weird word to use, but that's what it is. When I call them or email them, I get an immediate response, and they're always interested to help answer questions, solve problems. If there's an issue, they help solve the issue. Purina, I'm loyal to Purina. Been with them a long time. I'm an ambassador for them, and that all started in 1995 when we sent a letter, and I've told that story a lot, so I'm not going to tell it tonight. But the thing about Purina is their R&D. They do the research to figure out what each type of fish needs nutritionally, and then they put together the formula. Now, yeah, they got issues, just like every big company does, but they've got great products, and their products, to me, are proven. I've grown bluegill over 3 pounds with Aquamax fish food. I've grown bass, feed trained bass, up over 8 pounds on their Aquamax largemouth pellets. I've no doubt seen increases in survival rates of baby bluegill by feeding some of their starter feeds. So there's no doubt in my mind that stuff works really, really, really well. Jeremy Day, can you explain differences of ag lime? Well, most of the differences of ag lime is just how it's ground up. But ag lime is calcium carbonate. Now, there's a bunch of other kinds of lime as well. There's hydrated lime. There's quick lime, like calcium hydroxide. Calcium sulfate is gypsum. The kind of lime you want is calcium carbonate. That's what you want, because that's what increases the alkalinity in a pond. If you need lime, you need ag lime. Now, some of these other kinds of lime serve a different purpose. Some of it's used to buffer alum treatment, so I'm not going to get into that tonight. But ag lime is what people need for ponds if you need lime. That's calcium carbonate. John Moore in Kentucky. Danny Mack. I wish now our seining lesson had not been stormed out. I want to call lots of 7 to 9 inch bluegills. Is Wild Turkey 101 drinkable? I'm trying. I'd say it would be. Now, Danny Mack, I'm pretty sure you're signed up for the Institute of Higher Pondology online courses. There is a video in that online course about how to seine a pond. We seined one of those hatchery ponds, up there at LL, 2 before we sold that place last year. Speaking of which, Chris Blood would want me to do this. The Institute of Higher Pondology, I'm getting ready to hold another one. Danny Mack and Jacob, you guys, I have found a venue that I love, and we're going to set it up for the last week of October. I'm going to go meet with them on Friday, finalize it, and then do a big marketing push. See if I can get 10 to 15 people that want to come spend time with me, work on lakes, do some in-class time, talking about the different pieces of the puzzle of pond and lake management. I know it's going to be $1,500, give or take a little bit, depending on how much the lodging is at this venue where we're going to go look. But we do also have an online Institute of Higher Pondology. Go to pondboss.com and you can find it, or you can go to pondboss.teachable.com. And then there's like 22 or 23 videos, and I've got another video I'm about to add to it the next week, and several videos I'm going to add to it the next week. But it's got, I think, 6 different modules. If you bought them all by themselves, it's like $1,100. But if you buy all of them, it's $495, and you get access to me one-on-one. So for those of you that are real serious about wanting to manage your fishery, deal with aquatic plants, you're going to build a new lake, things like that, the Institute of Higher Pondology online is a must do. And if you're real interested, you want to spend time with me, hang out with other speakers and pros, and spend time in an electrofishing boat, maybe a seine, I don't know, I got to figure all that out Friday. Then you may want to come to the one in person. It's going to be near Brenham, Texas, Danny Mac, not very far from you. Between San Antonio and Houston, in a beautiful part of the country. Doug Brown, F1s are 3 years old now, but instead of adding more F1s, I decided to add some very impressive northern bass and very impressive Florida bass from Titan Bass. Your thoughts on this? That is a good idea. That is a win-win deal, because what you're doing with the northern bass is you're going to add aggression, fish that are aggressive to bite, and with the very impressive Florida bass, you're going to maintain that genetic integrity to create some of your own F1s and not worry about your FXs, or if an F1 crosses with an F1, it can't be an F1. So I think that's hedging your bets with genetic strains. That's a good idea. Jim Allen, for the last 2 years, we haven't seen any bryozoan colonies clinging to docks and branches. Is that a common thing going on in other lakes, or something we need to check into? I see bryozoans as they typically ebb and flow, and where you see them, the water chemistry is stable. I think with the red algae that you're talking about, that kind of thing can take out bryozoans. Now, bryozoans, you guys can look them up if you want to. Bryozoans. They look like a brain sticking to a stick. But what they are is they're kind of a cross between a plant and an animal, which, if there is such a thing, they're immobile, they filter water, and they've got to have happy water or they can't live. And so I don't know how you check into it. I know this, that if the water is stable and happy and there's a presence of them, then they're going to proliferate. You'll see a bunch of them, and they're going to kind of come and go. Okay, so I see a question coming to, let's see, Scott's asking about the F1s after 3. Yeah, that's a good, now that right there, F1s after 3 years, that's going to tell you how these fish perform. Because after 3 years, here's what I would expect to see. I would expect to see the best of the best being probably 4 pounds, 4.5, maybe 5 pounds. And then the middle size ranges 2 to 3. And then a few stragglers, especially the males, maybe a pound and a quarter. And they're to the point after 3 years that they have reproduced, and the young of the year are coming into a slot, and it's going to be time to start culling the underperforming batch of the originally stocked fish and the up-and-coming underweight young of the year that were spawned last year and this year. So now's the time to be culling, but we'll see that. Danny Mack, let's see, Dave Weber, good to see Dave. Does the decreasing fall photo period affect the fall feeding frenzy, or is it strictly a water temperature scenario? It's both. Photo period is nature's signal that things are beginning to wind down. The trees know they got to mature and the pecans need to fall off, or the acorns are going to fall if they didn't already fall because of the drought. Water temperature is a huge piece of the deal, because that temperature, regardless of photo period influences it, but when the temperature gets into that window where the fish is in its maximum operating window, which, like, take a bluegill for example, that's going to be 55 to 78. Largemouth bass, more like 60 to 75. When they're in that window, that's when they're the most active. That's when their metabolism is at its peak, working the best. Its heart rate's the best. That's when they're going to feed the most. Okay, let's see here. Ian, if fish die and float, what's the ratio to sink that you never see versus float? It kind of depends on that's kind of a logarithmic curve, because the more fish die, the more fish float. So if you have a massive kill, there's not enough predators or scavengers to come eat them. So if you have a handful of fish float, a handful of fish die, probably 100% of them won't float because they won't get the chance. Something's going to eat them. Turtles are going to eat them. Birds are going to eat them. Raccoons are going to swoop them up. Buzzards are going to snag them. So the ratio of float to sink is directly related to how many fish die. If you have 1,000 fish die, 900 are going to float. They'll all end up getting eaten, but it's going to take longer because it's the whole army of scavengers have got to come in and take advantage of that. Harrison Davis, what are your thoughts? Oh, my thing scrolled up here. What are your thoughts on why fish of the same species appear to grow larger in larger lakes? Fewer numbers. That's it. More space, fewer numbers, plasticity. The best of the best can take advantage of everything in that lake, move around to get it, and the numbers are lower because bigger lakes per unit of water are not nearly as productive as smaller bodies of water are. I keep watching my dog. I don't want her to squat on the carpet. That's why I think they have more space, better plasticity opportunities, and there's just fewer fish per unit of water. How big is a fish city supposed to be? That's directly related to how much natural habitat that you've got. I've seen fish cities cover an area that would be probably 40 feet long, 8 feet tall, and 25 feet wide, and that's $30,000 worth of fish cities, and so a fish city is supposed to be big enough to serve the function of habitat it's designed for in that environment. So a fish city that's designed to be a safe haven for adult bluegills, where young bluegills can have places to hide and graze. It's going to have a different density and cover a different surface area than one that's designed to attract fish from all over open water in a bigger space of water. So it varies based on what's needed in that body of water. That's a great answer to not answer. Jeff Thompson, water had 30 inches visibility in the spring, did not add fertilizer. In late July, the plankton bloom started to form. Now we have only 13 inches of visibility, olive green water. Biomass of fathead minnows is significant. Water temperature 80 degrees. Would you treat the pond? No, I would not. When you've got 13 inches and it's olive green, and you've got lots of fathead minnows, then here's what I would do, Jeff. I would check the visibility at daylight. Then I would check it now. And I bet you if you check it now, the density of that plankton bloom is different. It's going to be more dense, which means the visibility is going to be less this time of day than it will be in the morning where it dissipates. So 13 inches, while that's a little scary at 80 degrees, not quite as scary. And I would not treat the pond because the consequences of that olive green plankton bloom dying is a greater risk than leaving it alone. Here's the key parts of your question. 80 degrees, that's key. If it was 86, I'd tell you something different. Your pond's 80 degrees. 13 inches of visibility, that's spooky. Olive green, that's important. Olive green means that bloom has got a significant volume of zooplankton in it. The zooplankton are feeding on the phytoplankton. Zooplankton don't photosynthesize, they don't respire because they're little bugs. Okay, and they're feeding on what does respire and respiration and photosynthesis. Ooh, I need another sip of this Robert Mondavi private selection. So, don't treat it. Off subject. When bass die, do they all float? No, they don't. Depends on when they die. When it's colder, it takes longer for them to float. And believe it or not, sometimes, even in cold water, turtles will eat them. What causes them to float is their float that's inside, and as their cells break down, they form gas. So that's when they bloat. When they bloat, they float. And when their swim bladder has air in it, they'll float. But in the wintertime, sometimes they don't. Now, most of the time, if they don't get eaten quickly, then they will float. And if they float at night, if they pop up at 8:30 at night and something drags them off into the woods, you'll never know it. Doug Brown caught 2 just over 5 pounds. Males averaging just over 3. That's really, really good. If you got males that are 3 years old that weigh 3 pounds, you're doing a lot of things right. Ian had 4 bluegills over the past 3 weeks float. Yep, if you had 4 float, there's probably 6 or 8 that didn't. Any thoughts on artificial fish city versus natural fish city? Yeah, there's pros and cons on both of those. There's things about both of those I like. First of all, natural fish cities, trees. I use those all the time because they're available, and it's natural. The upside to that is it's available. You can move it where you want it and put it where you want it in the lake to serve the purpose. I'm real particular about that. I'm working on a lake now near Texarkana, Arkansas, where the bulldozer guys, I told them to save a bunch of elm trees they were going to push over, and I'll be damned if they didn't shove them into a pile. And what I instructed the the straw boss over there, I said, hey, have them take the track hoe, dig around the root ball, push the tree back and forth, pull it out, pick it up with a thumb, turn it sideways, and just stage them side by side. Don't roll them up, don't pile them up, don't break the canopies. I'll be damned. They took every one of those trees, stuck them in a pile, shoved them down. So now I'm talking to that landowner about artificial fish cities. Now, the thing I like about the artificial fish cities is they don't deteriorate, they don't degrade, they're going to last way past us. Their substrates are great for periphyte to grow on. And if you get them in the right place, they're magnificent fish attractors. Okay, I see Scott's having a conversation. That's good. Danny Mac, will Texas vultures eat dead fish like they'll go after a smashed deer? Yeah, they just do it different. There's been a couple of times in my career where I've gotten that phone call from somebody who's had a massive fish kill, and it looks like a buzzard convention, man. And the thing that they do, they're pretty patient. They got to wait till they will not wade out very deep. They're not going to go up to their feathers to try to pull the dead carcass out of the water. They're going to wait for it to float to it. So when they do that, they're going to pull them out, and then there's a battle. And they're going to eat it. Yep. Jim Allen, what's the minimum depth you'd want for an 80-acre dammed up creek? Has a watershed 13 times that and lots of underwater springs that show up on sonar. Trying to decide when to dredge, if ever. You know, an 80-acre lake, if you're going to dredge it, man, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. So the minimum depth you'd want, when I read that question, I read it two different ways. I think for an 80-acre lake, you want as much depth as you can get. Which, what that means to me is 35 to 40 feet, near the borrow pit of the dam is probably pretty good. 25 is fine. But if the rest of the lake averages 4.5 feet, that's okay. I like to see in a perfect world, which does not exist for an 80-acre lake, you'd like to see a 3-to-1 slope going down to 5 feet deep. And then whatever happens after that is a lot less relevant. So, I'm going to tell you an average depth of 5 feet, 4.5 feet. If you're going to dredge it, boy, you need to do some good homework where you can estimate the volume of soft material there is, and I don't think I dredge much any deeper than 5 feet deep. But that's a conversation we can have specifically later. Let's see here what Scott's saying. What's the best way to help reduce a very overpopulated crappie in a 75-acre lake? We're introducing larger bass since crappie have hurt the bass population, but thinking about hybrids as well. How many hybrids per acre? 10-inch hybrids. So when you say hybrid, I presume you're talking about wipers. I've used wipers to help control overpopulated crappie. It takes several years for that to happen. Those 10-inch wipers, if you can buy them that big, I'd start off with I'd start off with 20 per acre. That's 1,500. That's what I'd start with. And then as they grow up and the crappie numbers go down, then you can start culling some of those wipers. I'd stock at least 10 per acre, and I'd shoot more for 20. Because, you want to blitz those crappie, keeping in mind that they're going to reproduce every year. And you can feed those hybrid stripers and make them grow even faster, but they're still going to eat those crappie, but they're also going to eat bluegills. They're also going to eat baby bass, which that could be bad, it might not be, but if crappie are disrupting everything, then that's a good target. Well, there goes my throat. Debbie tells me I talk too much, but I haven't talked that much. Tim Deal, the maximum depth of our pond was determined when shale rock was hit. No clay, had to be packed except for the dam. Now after 22 years, sediment needs to be cleaned out. Shallow in depth is now down to 1 foot, approximately 3 feet. Can damage be done using an excavator to clean the sediment out? Absolutely, yes, it can. I think the smartest way to do that, I don't remember how big your pond is, Tim, but if you can get some water off of it, where a piece of equipment can get out there and evaluate that, knowing what you just told me, or what you're saying here, you need to talk to somebody, but yeah, I would talk to an earth moving contractor about that, and tell them how the pond was built. An excavator can do a good job, but you got to have an operator that knows how to do it. Talk to Michael Gray about that. Justin Ludwig's comment is good. Yep. Okay, so it's about 7:20, and I think I'm going to start wrapping up. If you guys have a couple more questions, pitch them at me, but I want to go back through Pond Boss Magazine. Oh, Mark Williams has got something there. Hey, $35 a year, Pond Boss Magazine. Cheaper than a Friday night date, and it lasts a year. If this helps anyone, I had a friend call a bunch of plumbing companies, and he knew some of the owners out of the business plumbing places. Okay, you need some cash. So in other words, you bought a bunch of off-market plumbing scraps. There you go. Good advice from Mark Williams from Mountain Home, Arkansas. Yep. Okay, so hey, Institute of Higher Pondology. Go to pondboss.teachable.com to learn about that. If you have any questions, send me an email at info@pondboss.com. If you need a water test form, send me an email at info@pondboss.com. I'll send it to you. If you have more questions, send them at me. Greg Baird, our water is gin clear. Should I add olives and vermouth? Yeah, I would do that, and maybe just a little bit of olive juice to make it dirty. And don't forget the Tito's. Then you can have a really, really good martini of a pond. So I think that's a good place to stop. I really appreciate you guys watching this show. It makes it fun to do it, and you guys are lighthearted and having a big time with me, and I appreciate that. So I'm not sure where I'll be next Wednesday, probably here. And maybe one of these days, my wife will get my set fixed here in the background instead of stuff leaning on the wall. She did get a couple of bookcases that are out there on the sun porch ready to be painted. So thanks again. I'm going to go finish enjoying some of this one glass of Mondavi wine. She's restricted me to one glass because she says I don't act right. You guys know better than that. And I'll post something on Pond Boss Facebook page about the Institute of Higher Pondology in October near Brenham, Texas, near Chapel Hill, Texas. Right close to the Independence, where the first capital of Texas, right around the corner. So anyway, I appreciate it, and until next Wednesday, adios.